Just close the door and take the key. We'll be back in just a few days. Those were the words many Palestinian families said to themselves when they were forcibly expelled from their homes and lands in 1948. But the days became decades. Yet, after 74 years, the hope of returning to their homeland has never been abandoned. When you enter any house of any Palestinian refugee, you will see this key hanged or put in the most significant place in the house. It's kept as a souvenir or a reminder for all of us refugees of our destroyed houses that our grandparents were expelled from. What happened to Palestinians during the process of the creation of the State of Israel violated all international and human rights laws. Approximately 750,000 Palestinians were displaced and became refugees. They were uprooted from their homes. None of these displaced people were ever allowed to return to their homes or communities from which they were displaced. And the Palestinian refugee population has continued to grow in the time that has passed since 1948. Hundreds of Palestinian towns and villages were emptied of their populations and destroyed. This tragedy is known as the Nakba by Palestinians. Every year on May 15th, Palestinians around the world mark the Nakba or catastrophe, referring to the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948. While Israelis celebrate the Independence Day of their state that was built on our suffering. Today, there are more than 7 million Palestinian refugees scattered around the world. An estimated 70% of all Palestinians worldwide are refugees, while 1 out of 3 refugees worldwide is Palestinian. Imagine you are living in your beautiful, safe town, in your stony, cozy home that's surrounded with olive, almond, and fig trees. You're living a safe, peaceful, and a simple farmer's life, when all of a sudden, their life is turned into the worst nightmare ever. Let's imagine this. You're living in your town, city, or village, where you are right now. Perhaps in London, Los Angeles, Amsterdam, Vienna, Toronto, or let's say Oslo. All of a sudden, strangers from all over the world come and take over your home, your land, your apartment, and claim it to themselves, only because they say that God chose them and told them to occupy your homes and take over your life. That's exactly what happened in 1948. Jewish people from all over the world came and occupied our homes in our old villages and towns where my grandparents lived, and they claimed that those villages and towns were empty and that Palestinians did not exist. This is the story that they're trying to convince the whole world with, to try to justify the inhuman, brutal attempt to ethnic cleanse us. Through all the massacres they committed against Palestinians trying to take over their homes, those towns and villages were not unpopulated, as they claim. They were inhabited with us Palestinians who had a life that's full of activities and accomplishments. I am the 3rd generation of refugees. My grandparents come from villages that are located around Jerusalem. And as a result of the creation of the State of Israel, my grandparents were expelled from their homes and forced to live in refugee camps, very crowded refugee camps. The Nakba is still lived by Palestinian refugee families displaced for more than 74 years, many of whom lived in refugee camps across the region. Those keys stand as a witness on our suffering throughout those years, despite the fact that many of those keys are no longer belong to existing doors. Palestinian refugees are still holding onto their keys. Possessing the key is like possessing an irrefutable document confirming ownership rights. The keys of their front doors passed from one generation to the next. So we, the grandchildren of the first generation of refugees, still hold onto these keys and will pass them to our kids. Many Palestinians also name their children after their original villages and towns that they were uprooted from, to remind themselves of their rights to their land, such as Jaffa, Bisan, Kermel, Jenin, Majdal, Quds, and Palestine. The key is a symbol of gut-wrenching yearning and pain of being separated from home. Palestinian refugees are lacking the most basic human rights, suffer from inadequate international protection and assistance. The question that rises here, how would you accomplish peace between the two nations while refugee camps are still existing and while Palestinian refugees are still suffering and the world still denying their suffering? The reality of Palestinian forced displacement is at the core of the Palestinian experience, and the Palestinian refugee issue is at the heart of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. A just resolution of the refugee issue, one that recognizes the right of return and provides a range of meaningful choices to refugees, is essential to a successful negotiated solution between the two nations. After all this, imagine yourself a Palestinian refugee that was expelled and kicked out of your home, living currently in a crowded refugee camp. What would you do? How would you feel?